Get to know your LCSO. Information flows, let's learn and grow. With every episode we gotta know. Oh yeah, LCSO, let's go.
Sheriff Mike Chapman here. I want to welcome you back to our Get to Know Your Loudoun County Sheriff's Office series, our podcast series, which we have recently kicked off, and we are honored here to have the presence of Robert Mosier. He's my lieutenant colonel in charge of the Courts and Corrections Division, but he's got an extensive history when it comes to law enforcement and some things you might find quite interesting about him. And so we're happy to have him here. And throughout this podcast, I'm just going to, since he's a friend of mine, I'm just going to call him Bob, if that's okay, Bob. I'm not going to call you Robert. Okay, so my friend Bob, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and what he's done and what brought him here to Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. So, Bob, if you could give us a little background on yourself and how you even got involved in law enforcement.
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me here, and also having the opportunity to work with you and the men and women of the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office has been quite the experience. It's a lot of fun.
We're happy to have you, actually. You've done a great job.
Well, to start off, people asked me before, how did I become engaged or interested in law enforcement? And it actually started when I was 9 years old. I was looking at, okay, I'm going to date myself here. So a Sears and Roebuck catalog over Christmas. I wanted to pick out one.
So not on Amazon?
No,
okay,
no.
right.
This was old school, So I was picking out, and I saw a kid. He was standing there in a uniform, and he was doing traffic control. Had a whistle in his mouth. I said, what is that? I want to know a little bit more about that. So I set this goal for myself to become engaged in law enforcement at that early age. Mm-hmm. Not understanding everything that went along with it, it just appealed to me to be able to be in a position to help. So fast forward, that was the focus, and I wound up becoming a police officer when I turned 21, 3 days after I turned 21.
So where were you a police officer at?
So I initially started as a dispatcher.
Okay.
So I started, and that was with the city of Manassas Park.
Okay.
So after I had been there for about a year and a half,
right.
and then I started off as a police officer in the city of Manassas Park.
Okay.
So that was the probably the most educational time for me as a law enforcement officer, because it was a small department.
Right.
And, working with a small agency, you'll do anything from working a parking ticket to
right.
a homicide in uniform.
Right,
and
right.
at that time, I did. I was able to work a number of different types of crimes and different scenarios. And being with a small agency, it also introduced me to being able to exemplify cooperation with other agencies,
sure.
because you can't do these things on your own.
Sure.
You had to work with other agencies. So quite an amazing time.
So I don't know how you felt when you got out of the academy and you started. I know when I started in Howard County, Maryland, I was 21 years old. I got out of the academy, and I felt like when I was after I went through my FTO training and I then became my own person there in the car, I felt like I was in outer space. I mean, when you think and you think about, all I had back then was a gun, a baton, and a radio, and my handcuffs. And I look at all the things that we carry now, but I felt like it was really, really a lot of responsibility at an early age to take all that kind of stuff on. And you did a lot. I mean, we had the department I was with was probably about 250 sworn at the time. Yeah. So it was, for us, that was a fairly good size. So we had our detective, we had people, traffic units and all that could handle some of the other stuff. So we actually did have some outlets that didn't require us to do all that. But I don't know how you felt when you first got out there, because it sounds like you were doing like everything from a barking dog to a homicide.
Yeah, it was exactly barking dog. I can remember working those and picking up the dog. It was an interesting time, but what it did, it just honed your skills as a law enforcement officer, because you had to be broadened into what you would become involved in. We didn't have specializations.
Right.
So you had the opportunity to work and learn on any particular thing. I mean, I can remember getting applying for my first search warrant, and I had to dig through the filing cabinet in the office to find out somebody had written a search warrant before, and the affidavit, and kind of go through that affidavit and try to figure it out. Yeah. And an interesting story about that, because when I went through that process, I can remember getting a call. It was for a possession with intent to distribute marijuana case that the prosecutor called me, and he says, hey, you got a preliminary hearing coming up on this date. He goes, can you come in and talk to me on this case? I said, yeah, sure. So I go up to, and remember, this in the city, the misdemeanor cases would be handled by the city attorney, but the felonies would be handled by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So I get up there, he goes, who wrote this affidavit? I said, I did. He goes, man, this thing's terrible. He goes, but you're in pretty good shape because there's a recent advent in the law that said if the police officer was acting in good faith, that even if the affidavit was defective, that it would be, considered and applied for. So and attributed to being true. So it was great because the case went forward and the guy got convicted. And
well, that's how you learn.
Yeah,
that's how you learn. Yeah. So you start there in Manassas. Okay. So tell us where your career took you from there.
So I was in Manassas Park at that point, and then, but when I went to the academy, we'll back up. When I went to the academy, I was in firearms class, and there was a lieutenant at the time from Fauquier County. He was a firearms instructor, and he used to comment on my shooting capability. And what he said was, after I graduated the academy, he goes, "Look, if you ever need a job, we could always use a good shooter in Fauquier. Let me know." So you tuck these.
Would
things
you like to shoot a lot of people in Fauquier?
So you tuck these things away in the back of your mind because you never know. Okay, but the connection was made. So I met my wife Cindy, and we've been married 40 years now. But I met Cindy, and we her parents lived in Fauquier County. So this is 1988 time period. And I said, well, you want to move closer to your mom, I could maybe apply in Fauquier County. So that's what wound up happening. I applied. So I called the lieutenant, right? And when I gave him a call, I said, hey, this is Bob Mosier. He goes, well, it's not lieutenant anymore. It's Lieutenant Colonel now. I said, well, Lieutenant Colonel, he told me to call you. So here he is. So I called him. And anyway, long and short of it, I went to work with Fauquier County as a deputy. So,
Yeah. And so how long were you with Fauquier? Because I know your career path took you some different areas here. So how long were you with Fauquier?
So I was with Fauquier for 10 years.
Okay.
So about 5 years with Manassas Park, and then at that point almost 10 years with Fauquier. And again, just a great opportunity to learn because it was a budding jurisdiction. Didn't have it wasn't a large agency, but we had the opportunity to do many different things. And so I worked initially patrol operations, and then I went into criminal investigations and did tactical operations. At one point I was commander of CID, at one point commander of the criminal investigations division at one point, and patrol. So I had all three of those areas under my supervision at that time, different times. So it was a great learning experience as well. So prepare me for the next thing. Okay,
and what was the next thing?
So I don't know if you remember this, but the Dayton Peace Agreement by President Clinton at the time, and the American government for the first time agreed to give the United Nations 250 American police officers as part of the U.S. State Department to monitor and enforce the Dayton Peace Agreement. And that was in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I wound up going to Bosnia for a year as a deputy, but assigned.
Well, that must have been an eye-opening experience for you.
It was. It was the first time I'd traveled internationally, other than maybe a trip to the Bahamas, by the port there.
Worst places to go.
Yeah. But it was the first time I'd ever been there, and so that was an eye-opening experience. It was so many people in, tremendous need, and also just the civil liberties that we enjoyed to watch those in a former communist regime, Yugoslavia, how the police interacted with their citizens over there and during wartime. So it was, very interesting to say the least. Right.
Okay, so how long did you do that for?
I was there for a year.
Okay.
And I came back, and I was getting ready to get right back into local law enforcement, but funding had gone by the wayside for the position that I had occupied before in Fauquier. So somebody had heard about me working with the State Department when I was over in Bosnia, And I went ahead and I applied with something called International Justice Mission at the time. And that was a faith-based non-governmental organization that was involved in defend the orphan, plead for the widow, and working with local governments in different parts of the world to enforce their laws, where it may not be non-existent.
Mostly human trafficking?
Human trafficking is part of it, but people that were in distress couldn't call 911 and get a response. So this was something that these ministries became aware of and wanted to offer support, and human trafficking was a big part of that.
Well, how did that work since you were working with non-governmental organizations? And so what you're talking about here is not necessarily having the backing of a U.S. embassy where you go. Did that make things difficult for you?
This is part of it. When the experience that I gained when I was in Bosnia, it's kind of interesting how things set you up for the next part in your life. But what happened was it was a very good educational experience in how to interact with local governments and also interact with other governmental entities. So, the United Nations at that time, we had 37 policing organizations from around the world that were working in one area. So it afforded the opportunity to get to know law enforcement from these different countries. So when we went in with a particular problem, like South Asia, I had already worked with South Asian police. So there was a direct connect to be able to work with South Asian police to be able to get a response on a particular problem. If it were children being trafficked across the border from Nepal into India, let's say, whatever it might have been. So I would pull those contacts and try to get something worked. And, lo and behold, you'd have people being released and arrests being made, for violations of law.
Well, an admirable job to do, and certainly a lot of difficulties there. Having myself served overseas with embassies, that certainly streamlines the process. But having to do those kinds of things that you did without that kind of support, that daily support, very, very difficult.
Yeah, no, it was.
So how did that lead you to your next station in life here when it came to your law enforcement career?
Yeah, no. One of the things working internationally, I think I traveled to 25 different countries, but really focused on maybe 9 or so for different types of operations like that, whether it was human trafficking or stateless persons. I mean, just the different aspects of what they would do. Child bonded labor, that was a big one. Where children would be sold into slavery to make cigarettes or whatever it might be. So understanding these different law systems and people being incarcerated for no reason other than administrative concerns in different parts of Latin America, South America. How did it prepare me for the next step was I had this very broad context on transnational organized crime and how that impacted folks. So with the global war on terrorism, I was selected to become part of a mission with the Department of Defense. We had about 300 law enforcement officers that had similar backgrounds. And this had to do with counter IED. So this was to attack the network, train the troops, and defeat the device. So the aspect of biometrics comes into play, criminal investigations, how to relay this information, and ultimately how to hold bad guys accountable or take them off of the battlefield one way or the other. That was a unique experience. I found myself in uniform on different portions of the battlefield at different times with our forces in Iraq mostly. So I did that for about 2 years.
Okay. Wow. That's a heavy load there. So you go from there to. Did you then come back to the U.S. here, or?
I did. I came back.
Tell us where that took you.
So after coming back to the U.S., it was a continuation, working with the counter IED mission. And it was really how to create, and this was the challenge because you had intelligence that is classified. You can't release that information. However, there was information that could be kind of sorted through and provided for prosecution at the local level in different countries. So we would put together these packages that would have the unclassified information that could be given to a prosecutor to prosecute someone for, placing a bomb or whatever it might be locally. So we would work closely with within our framework, within the Department of Defense, to get that information to go where it needed to go in the world to be able to enhance prosecutions, to keep to disrupt anyone on committing these types of crimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that lead you to become the sheriff of Fauquier County?
There's always been a background of wanting to run for sheriff. I always felt led to do it.
Right.
So I made that commitment after I got Cindy behind me.
It's always a struggle.
Yeah. No. You got to have that. You can't. I mean, you can't be effective unless you have that support in your life and whatever that is. Especially if you're going to do good things.
I don't think people have any idea what a big job it is to run.
They don't.
For office, let alone sheriff, is very, very difficult.
Yeah, I found it was newfound respect for anybody that ran for a public position to understand what that means and what that entails, and kudos to you. I mean, you've done it, 4 times, 5 times?
Well, 4 times.
4 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I actually had 2 primaries, so 6 times.
That's right. And contested elections. I ran contested elections too, so I get it. I mean, it's a whole new framework. But what happened was, and you may remember this, I think you probably do. So I was doing the rounds, if you will, trying to make sure that I understood the nature of what the job would entail in different areas. So I touched base with elected officials all around Fauquier County at that time, and I came in and spoke with you during that time that I was going to run. So I committed to run, and so 2012 was dedicated to the move, and 13, and then 14 and 15 the run, and then actually won the election in 2015. Took office in 2016.
Okay. And then you had Fauquier County. How big of an operation was that?
So 660 square miles and approximately 200 personnel.
Okay.
Maybe 150 deputies.
Okay.
At the time. So I got involved.
Was it full service? Did you have a jail?
Full service.
Okay.
We did everything. I think there were only 7 full service sheriffs in Virginia, and at that time we were one of those 7. I think it's still the same, but we had 3 courthouses, adult detention center, and then, of course, patrol and criminal investigation operations. Okay,
so you ran again, right, and won again, and so you were in your 6th year, I guess, when. So I it's interesting because I had helped Governor Youngkin when he was a candidate with his campaign a little bit, and I know after he got elected, he had asked me who I would recommend to be the Secretary of Public Safety. And honestly, almost without any hesitation, I mentioned you. Yeah. I said, I've gotten to know you a little bit, certainly knew your background, and I knew you from going to the conferences, the Virginia Sheriff's conferences and stuff like that. And I thought you would have the right background, demeanor, and level of expertise to handle that job. And so fortunately, I guess he put some stock in my recommendation here, and I'm glad he did. And then you had that job for a while. What did you think about that position? Yeah, incredible position, opportunity to make a huge impact in Virginia at the time. First off, just the idea of being selected after going through a process of interviews. And I don't know if you know the full story, but I didn't apply for the job. I was contacted by the governor's office, and I wound up going in and talking to him, and I think a variety of other folks did as well. And so at first when we got in there, it was an idea of, let's do a survey about what we have and some of the issues that we had faced. And having been a sheriff and working in Virginia, there were some things that we could immediately take a look at. But the most pressing thing at the time had to do with violent crime in Virginia, and then also the fentanyl issues that we were dealing with in law enforcement. So to be able to step in that role, to be able to assist with getting the focus and the resources into those areas was huge. So we were able to do that. We did it with the state police and getting them to come alongside other jurisdictions. And there were some. There was one, Petersburg is one example. During that time, there were a string of 5 shootings within 24 hours. And so I can remember calling the chief of police, and this is a secretary, calling the chief and said, look, we're here to help you, and what can we do? And we worked out a plan, and
ultimately that plan is the same plan that went into effect in 13 other jurisdictions.
Right.
It was Operation Bold Blue Line, made a tremendous impact in reduction of violent crime. And then, not to mention Operation Ceasefire, that was worked in conjunction with the Office of the Attorney General, working during that time. So it was full on. I mean, just an everyday approach in what we would do from public safety. But it wasn't just that. It had to do with the different areas that's required for the Secretariat, whether it be fire programs or the Department of Corrections or all the different aspects of what we do. So I wound up doing that for about a year and a half. And then it was time to come north a bit.
Well, we were lucky. I mean, it was a great opportunity for us. I mean, I was able to kind of recruit you here, and I thought, we could really use your expertise here. I am so proud of. I consider us to have an all-star team here. I mean, up and down our ranks, but I would say our leadership team, I put it up against anybody in the country.
Yep.
And when I look at that, we were so happy to get you here. So now I look at your responsibilities. So we got it broken down into 3 areas, and we're going to certainly sit down with every one of our lieutenant colonels, and then our majors, and then even probably some of our captains to go over some of the things that they do in their particular areas and stuff. Big job, and so we have it broken down where we have enforcement operations, and that entails just a whole bunch of different things. And we have Lieutenant Colonel Chris Sawyer has that. Our investigations, Lieutenant Colonel Gunn Lee, and he has that, as well as our internal investigations as well. And then we've got courts and corrections. And can you tell us a little bit about that role that you have, that position, and some of the things that you're looking at, what you're doing over there?
No. So again, it's a wide area, but it's great because it can have the most impact in different ways. The admin tech aspect of what we do, employment services, recruitment, selection, hiring, training. This is the future of the organization. And if you remember, when I came on board, I was doing my internal survey, and I was thinking to myself, wow, the things that we're doing here inside Loudoun County are the things that I was striving to as sheriff in Fauquier, that we started on this path.
Right.
But it was clear it's nationally recognized because of the number of people that I came in contact with that had worked in other jurisdictions, and they'd heard about the good work inside Loudoun, so they would they would want to come on board. And so that's part of my experience.
Right.
I got to see that, witness that, firsthand. So the recruitment, selection, and the hiring, and then also with the courts division, and then the corrections division.
Right.
But the corrections aspect of it too. I mean, we're our brother's keeper, right? I mean, we have these people that come in; they're all going to get out one day. So our job is to one, keep them safe; two, keep the community safe; and then three, to be able to work out what the reintegration into society looks like, and how we can do that. So I just know that they're making tremendous strides over there, and then with the support of the county government and being able to do this is really working out really well. So,
well, I had my wife Ann on an earlier podcast, and we talked about all the things that we do when it comes to crisis intervention. And one of the things I actually forgot to mention was our reentry, what we do for reentry, and the amount of effort that we put into the different programs so that people have a way to go once they get out. It's interesting to me, when I first took this job, I was always in enforcement, whether it was with police department, DEA, whatever the case is, okay? And then I became sheriff, as you know, and then all of a sudden you got the full circle, okay? So it's not just your concern to arrest somebody and put them in jail. Okay, now you got them. Now you got to deal with them when they get out, okay? So the main goal of when people get out is for them to not go back into the system, So you have to have the right elements there that they can do so that they don't end up back in your system here, So, and I know you do. I know you have reentry day and stuff like that.
We do. The different programs. For it's a fair. It's an inmate job fair, so they can try to figure out what they're going to do next to try to help them get their license or whatever it might be. But it really opens up the door. It gives them an opportunity to succeed, to be successful when they leave, as opposed to being out on the street, and then you wind up picking them up again in a very short period of time.
And then one of the things you mentioned with recruitment, because you got the admin tech side of the house, and we're doing some incredible things with technology. Drone is a first responder program. This podcast, we're starting to do some things that are really outside the window here. One of the things that I've seen here when you're talking about recruitment is the fact that so many of the people that we're recruiting are done by the people that are already here. It's by referral. it's almost like, and I look at some of these other agencies that are providing $25,000, $20,000 higher.
Yeah,
we're not doing that.
No.
I mean, I think we got a little bit, but when I look at the fact that people that are here are the biggest reason other people are coming here, we're not having any problem. Unless you're seeing a problem, I haven't seen any problem.
We have consistently had low numbers when it comes to turnover or any other issues, our attrition rate, all the rest of it. It's exemplary. So there's no issues there. People are coming here because they hear about the leadership, the style of policing. Right. In other words, nobody's being told, well, don't do that. No, you enforce the law as you have been trained and see fit. And you know what? The organization, we stand behind you in anything that you would undertake, as long as you're not operating in some other context, operating in good faith.
Sure.
And so it's a great organization to be part of, because we will take care of our folks in every shape and form. Be able to do that.
Last question for you, and this has to do with courthouse operations.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult, because we've got to keep these judges happy over there, we've got to keep them safe. Do you see any issues or concerns with the operations that we have over there, or how do you think that they're going?
No, I when it comes to the courts, the protocols are in place, and don't forget we have a relatively new courthouse that is automatically generated security considerations and concerns that have been addressed or are in the process of being addressed. So no issues there. And if you hear of something, please let me know.
No,
but
I don't think the new courthouse is phenomenal.
It is.
Actually,
it is. Yeah, and they do a lot for the community access and different programs. So, as a matter of fact, they have the 3 different. You were talking about they're going to get out one day. Where do they go? They have recovery court, veterans court. They have different programs for the
Drug
courts
court,
as well. Drug court, recovery court, and then also they just recently started a juvenile behavioral health docket as part of that process as well. So there's emphasis there, and this has come about also between the collaboration of the sheriff along with the Community Criminal Justice Board. Right. So it's been part of the courts and. Any of the programs.
And I know you're active with that. You're, certainly very active with all those things. And I tell you, it makes a huge difference. And I think that outreach, that engagement is really why we have the success that we do. And so, but I want to thank you for being here for this podcast. And your background is phenomenal. And I'm certainly glad we were able to pull you away and get you up here as part of our team here. We've got an amazing team up here. And I think our results speak for themselves. And I'm glad you could sit down with us today on this podcast. And keep up the great work. And thanks again, Bob.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.